Hello, my name is Vincent, and I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel. This channel is going to be dedicated to the development and the further defining of the term that I've basically come to know, and it is the term Sinisterism. Now, what is Sinisterism? Now, Sinisterism is what I call a way of being on the left-hand path. Now, I'm going to assume that if you're on this video, you don't really need me to explain what the left-hand path is, but if you don't know what it is, then I suggest doing some research elsewhere on what the left-hand path is. But essentially, what Sinisterism is a term that I first heard. I've heard the term a few times, but the first time that I actually thought that it could be something that I would want to define, something that I would want to further develop and present a philosophy to people, was when I watched a video by a man named Thomas Leroy. Now, Thomas Leroy is the founder of something called the Sect of the Horned God, and the Sect of the Horned God is basically an organization where people learn and kind of become, I don't want to say initiated, because that makes it sound more cultish, but it's, you learn about the left-hand path, and it's like an occult school. They practice what they call rational occultism, which is a good term for it, certainly. And this video was basically Thomas just saying how a sinisterist is basically somebody who takes multiple pieces and multiple aspects and things, basically, from all different left-hand path, I wouldn't say belief systems, but left-hand paths. So, Satanism, whether that be Levian Satanism or otherwise, Luciferianism, Thelema, Setianism, left-hand path Hinduism, dark paganism, Hermeticism, anything that serves you, you basically take and you use. Now, that is a good definition, but I'm interested in taking that name, taking that term, and developing it, meaning to make it into its own defined, maybe not path. You can call it a path. I think that's appropriate, but I would call it a gate. Sinisterism is a gate to the all of the left-hand path, meaning this what I like to call the great occult pool that you dive into and you come back bringing what it is that serves you, thus creating a self-styled, validated belief. Now, this is something that I think a lot of people on the left-hand path are already experimenting with. They already are sinisterists. They have a sinister nature by their very essence, but they just don't have a name for it. Now, I'm not saying you necessarily need a name for it, but for me, this idea of taking something that's already vague and defining it and establishing it and giving it a name and something to kind of mentally associate with is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with it. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to first just tell you about my blog, which is called Rights to the Self, and it is a blog where I basically do the same thing that I do on this YouTube channel, which is try to define this new kind of mode of being, this mode of practice on the left-hand path, and I think that a lot of people will relate to it. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to read you my monograph on Sinisterism. So this is how I, Vincent Gaetano, because I want to make sure that you understand that this is my opinion, and that this is my presentation of Sinisterism, and that there will always be people who have different opinions. There'll be someone who agrees with it 98%, but then there's something that they go, maybe I don't agree with that. So this is just my ideas behind it, and this is my Sinisterism, and that is what I'm going to be presenting in the blog and in the YouTube channel. It's my form of Sinisterism. So I'm not saying that this is the end-all be-all. It's just this is my, brand of it, and this is what I present. So, my name is Vincent Gaetano, and let's get down to it. So, real quick, I just want to give like a little cursory kind of thing, and say that if you are or familiar with, have experience in Satanism, Luciferianism, Thelema, and any left-hand path, you will most likely be able to understand the concepts of Sinisterism and sort of get it quite easily. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this a little bit back, and I'm going to read to you very quickly my monograph of Sinisterism. This is up on my blog, which is, like I said, called Rights to the Self, Rights to the Self, and that blog will be linked if you go to the far right of my YouTube channel and you click the About section. I link my blog, and you can check that out. So, this is the basic concepts and kind of main point of Sinisterism. So the first one is very, very basic, and I'm not going to go that deep into it, and that is extreme self-interest. And when I say this, I don't mean it in the traditional satanic way. Now, I do. That is a piece of Sinisterism. If you're on the left-hand path, you care about yourself, and you want power and you want success. That's why you're on the left-hand path, of course. Not in like a money, too materialistic way, but you know what I mean. You want control over your life. You want to be the god of your own reality. So, what I mean with self-interest in the context of Sinisterism is you take what serves you, you leave what does not. So, you take Aleister Crowley. I find the law of Thelema to be very paramount in this whole left-hand path thing. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law is essentially the left-hand path statement. Like, that is what the left-hand path is. And so not only do I find that very important, but I find Aleister Crowley's teachings very important. I don't agree with everything that Aleister Crowley did, and I certainly don't agree with everything that Aleister Crowley said. The thing is that I take what he did write and what he did create and what he did prescribe in terms of rituals, and I use it in my own way. I think of myself first. Even if this thing seems like it's something I can't use, how can I literally take something and morph it to fit me? So you become the kind of arbiter of the all, as I call it. Meaning, you control what you take in, what you give out. You literally morph and change things to suit you and to fit your practice in your definition. So, the first two pretty much are just a continuation of that. So, freedom. The path of Sinisterism encourages adepts to explore and open any and all gates open to them on the left-hand path. This means making use of any system, ritual, concept, daemon, demonic beings, anything in the occult world that you think can suit you and that you can take and use it, you do that. And you do it freely. You are the keys and you are the gates. That is, I would say, the word of Sinisterism. That is the law of Sinisterism. You are the key and you are the gate. You are the agent of everything that is happening in your own mind and in your own interpretation of things. So if you, let's say, like I said, I really appreciate the law of Thelema. I don't have to go all in and say, no, okay, I'm a Thelemite now and I agree 100% with everything. That's not necessary. you have the ability, you are the god of your own reality. So you can take bits and pieces and morph, and kind of use it in a very self-stylized way. And that is something that is certainly much more what would be the word? It's more powerful, and it makes so much more sense in a left-hand path framework, because if you were to just look at something in a very dogmatic way and think, oh, well, Aleister Crowley said this, Anton LaVey said this, Michael W. Ford said this, so I now have to take that and I have to do it perfectly, or I have to do it just like they prescribed it, or else it's not right. That's not the way that the left-hand path goes, and that is not the way that the Sinisterist should be. Interpretation. Sinisterism understands that interpretation is a huge part of not only the left-hand path, but human nature as well, so everyone's going to put a little bit of themselves into their beliefs. You notice if you talk to, and I don't want to signal out Christians, but if you talk to Christians, they always, pretty much always, have at least a kind of different interpretation of their religion. So even if there's a bunch of people in the same church, in the same community, even in the same family, the chances are pretty much so that they're going to have, even if slightly, they're going to have a slightly different interpretation of their religion. They're going to have a slightly different idea of what, this particular book means, or what this particular metaphor means. Some people think the book of Revelations is metaphorical. Some people think it's totally literal. Some people think some of it is literal. Some people think some of it's metaphorical. It is impossible for you as a sentient, ego-having, strong Luciferian being, to not do that. You're going to do that. You're always going to put some of yourself in your beliefs. The key is to know that you're doing it and understand that you're doing it. So, Sinisterism is informed by this, and what Satan means to me can be, and most likely is, quite different than what that title means to you. Now, I just use Satan as an example, but that's an example. These names, these beings, have been changed throughout thousands of years. So what I think, what my mind associates when I think of the term Satan, Satanus, the adversary, it could be totally different than what someone else thinks. It's the same way how I always look at Satan and Lucifer as being two different aspects of the same being. Satan and Lucifer. A lot of other people totally disagree with that. They totally don't see it like that at all. That's just the way that I see it. It's the way that my brain looks at that and interprets it. It's what makes sense to me. So therefore, that's what I'm going to do. That is the sinister path. The sinister path is looking at something, being objective about it first, understanding the original symbology, understanding the history of what you're looking at, and then getting that interpretive process going. You understand the base principle, and then you start to look at it through your eyes and start to feed off of it, and it becomes you. You see it in your own light. Irrelevance of theism. To be a sinisterist does not mean necessarily being theistic or atheistic. Sinisterism is informed by the fact that the mind is extremely powerful. It matters not whether one believes literally in the names and forces he or she calls. When you invoke a spirit, name, daemon, etc., it will come to you in a psychological manner, thus affecting you and your subconscious. Now, I want to make it clear, I have my own beliefs on what's real, what's not real, what exists, what is just in our heads. But what I won't do in Sinisterism is I will never tell you what to believe, because that would be destroying the entire concept of Sinisterism. It would be taking that key and taking that gate and taking it away from you and saying, no, well, I'm going to tell you what to believe, even if you believe something to the contrary. Experience is what validates belief. If you just do a bunch of rituals and you come to the conclusion that the forces emanate from within your own mind, then that's the case. That's your reality. If you think that they come externally and they're real, entities, however you happen to define that, then that's what you believe. Maybe you believe in something halfway. Maybe you think it's both. Maybe you think that when you invoke something, you evoke it, and it comes within you and without you. Sinisterism understands that people and their beliefs are very personal, and what someone believes, they probably, especially if if you're on the left-hand path, probably have a good reason for it. You've probably thought about it for a while, and you're pretty strong in your belief. So you certainly don't need me to tell you what to believe in that regard. Even if the forces are not believed to be literal, the effect will of course be created. Sinisterism does not dictate atheistic or theistic belief to its adepts, to its adherents. You need to find out for yourself. You need to experiment. You need to invoke. You need to ritualize, and you need to see what that gate holds for you, and what that means for you in terms of whether you're more of an atheistic person or whether you're a theistic person. And also, I understand that being atheistic does not mean lack of spirituality, because Sinisterism is a spiritual path. It's a path of spiritual freedom and rebellion in its utmost sense. Focus on the adversarial force. Although Sinisterism encourages the use, veneration, and invocation of any force the practitioner chooses, and I mean that, Babylonian, Sumerian, demonic, satanic, pagan, Buddhist, Hindu, any pantheon of beings that you relate to, you invoke and you call, because you know more than anybody what names, what entities, what old beings of the old aeons would suit you, would serve you in the proper way. And so, with that said, my Sinisterism, and what I define Sinisterism as, is there will be a focus on the more dark, antinomian, and adversarial forces. Now, what is that? The adversary is basically a concept that has been exhibited in not only human nature, but religions made by man for literally ever. So the easiest example of this, there's so many different examples that I could go into, and I believe I will as I go on to make these videos. But the most easy example is Satan Lucifer. Now, we all know the story of Lucifer, but to kind of get to the point, every religion has the anti-god. Now that sounds kind of childish, like the Antichrist. I don't mean to sound like that, but in effect, what has happened, and it's a very special, powerful thing, is that human beings have always subconsciously realized that they are not reflected in the gods that they create. And what I mean by that is that Jehovah, the Hebrew God, is the most unhuman being ever. it's so funny that he's said to have created us in his own image because we're nothing like him and he's nothing like us. Every religion has a being that is the Lord of humans. He is the Lord of the earthly way. Humans are what they are. It doesn't matter how much you grovel to a god and go, oh my god, I'm sorry, and I sinned, and blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. You will never divorce yourself from your humanity. You will never, ever, ever separate yourself from your deep animal human instinct. That nature that's within you that could be quite dark. You'll never get rid of it. And so what the Satan is, the adversary, I call it the Satan, is this all-encompassing idea of being with the force that is of yourself, being with the force that is of the natural flow of the universe, because religions like Islam, for example, are anti-human religions. They hate humanity. They despise the flesh, and they despise the spirit too, because they basically kill you spiritually. If we're talking about Islam, their adversary would be Iblis, who, when everyone was bowing before Adam, he refused to. And if you notice, all of these beings, these adversarial beings, they fall. They get cast down. But when that happens, what happens? They almost always gain knowledge of reality. They gain dark gnosis. This is the people writing these texts. These are the religionists writing this. Because subconsciously they see that force out there, but they're afraid of it. Sinisterists are not afraid of it. And that is why I believe that because Sinisterism is meant to be the most free and it's supposed to be the gate of the left hand, to me, the adversarial beings are the gatekeepers of that gate. They are the embodiment of what the entire idea of Sinisterism and the left-hand path is. Now, that does not mean that Sinisterism is just another form of Satanism and I'm just going to put you in that box. Not at all. Like I said, invoke, venerate any deity, any being, any demon, anything that you relate to. It does not need to be satanic or adversarial at all. But just understand that Sinisterism is informed by that infernal force, that demonic force. Sinistra, which in Latin, sinister, used to mean left. How about that? Now, of course, the left hand back then, and just the left in general, was always associated with the opposite, the force of opposites, the dark going against the natural order, which is so ironic because we know in the left hand that it is the natural order. It is the way that humans truly are. And because of this, I believe that Sinisterism, adversarialism, and leftism, obviously not politically, but in the term of being left of the convention, they go like this, those concepts. They inform each other and they kind of come together. And it's when I started to really see this happening when I was writing about Sinisterism and I was turning my satanic nature into a deeper thing, I realized how it all coincided. And last but certainly, without a doubt not least, self-styled ritual practice. So, although I will prescribe certain rites and rituals in my blog and YouTube channel, I will, they will be presented more as practice rites. So, this doesn't mean that the given rites are not serious or powerful rites. It just means that they are meant more as examples of technique and not formula. So, for example, if I gave you an invocation to your true self, let's say, to kind of invoke your true desires, the ritual is not to say, okay, say the exact words that I've put down. It's so you can practice it, understand the technique behind the invocations, and then write your own words that suit you more powerfully. So the art of Sinistra Arcana, which is my term for sinister magic, sinister sorcery, sinister arcana, is one of total freedom in both formula and technique. So anything that you think is gonna affect the ritual, whether it be a tool that you want to use, whether it be a particular physical motion, a particular thing that you want to use, or like invocation, anything, any type of verbal technique, nothing is off limits in terms of what you put in your rituals, because it's your ritual, and the whole point of a ritual is to rise up energy and to direct the energy where you want it, and you can't get energy if you're doing something that is not building energy. So I am very determined to continue the development of this path, and I am going to go deeper, much deeper, and I want all of you to come with me along, for the ride. So, hail Sinistra Arcana. I very, very, very much hope that this video has resonated with you, and I want any and all feedback and any and all thoughts. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful night.